Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. One team that really does look like it is good enough to win a national championship. How about the Georgia Bulldogs? So Georgia, that was one of my best bets of the weekend. They hosted Auburn. Deep South's oldest rivalry game that's usually played early November, gets moved up this year. And Georgia freaking dominated, okay? Before we get to Georgia, I do quickly want to talk about Auburn, because shout out to all the Auburn fans that were all up in my mentions last week, all up on my podcast last week. Torres, you don't know what you're talking about, because I refuse to acknowledge that Auburn is the greatest team in the history of football because they beat Kentucky in a game where Kentucky had a touchdown taken off the board and in a game where their final two possessions came down to short yardage, short field situations after Kentucky turnovers, one of which wouldn't have happened if Kentucky's first touchdown had been taken off the board. So shout out to Auburn. I don't think you guys are very good. I think you guys are going to struggle all year. I think you're like a 5-5, 6-4 type football team. If I was doing SEC power rankings, I would have you no better than 7th or 8th, behind Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, LSU, maybe 6th. 6th is the highest, and I don't even think I'd put them ahead of Mississippi State right now. So anyway, shout out to Auburn. I don't think you're good. But the real story in this game was Georgia, because Georgia, pretty much since Kirby Smart got to Georgia, has not been able to find a quarterback. And I don't know if they have like the franchise right now. Like, they don't have Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, who of course ironically started his career at Georgia. They got a pretty good one in this Stetson Bennett kid though. And for people who didn't see this Georgia game on Saturday, really crazy backstory on their starter. His name is Stetson Bennett IV. Greatest SEC quarterback name ever, maybe, at least since John Parker Wilson. But Stetson Bennett, kind of a crazy story. He came to Georgia as a walk-on. Then he left Georgia, went to junior college, then came back to Georgia as a scholarship player. Never even heard of that, right? But the one thing I will say about him is the dude apparently is a grinder, because if you listen to the broadcast about a month ago, he was the 5th-string quarterback at Georgia. And the coaches basically told him, like, dude, we don't have snaps for you. And not only do we not have snaps for you, we appreciate you wanting to be part of this program, but you will never be our starter here. Like literally they talked about it in the broadcast. They're like, you will never be our starter here, which is insane because it's crazy how the world works, and we all know what's happened since. Jamie Newman, who was projected to be the starter, transferred from Wake Forest. He opts out of the season. I still believe, I don't think he was as close to winning that job as maybe other people thought. JT Daniels, the transfer from USC, wasn't cleared early, came back this week. I don't know if they didn't like him or they didn't think he was healthy. And then the other kid, DeJuan Mathis, really struggled against Arkansas. And so because of it, this kid Stetson Bennett gets the start, and he was awesome on Saturday. 17 of 28, 248 yards. But I think the story here, again, it's the Texas A&M thing. It's the story behind the story. Georgia's got all the pieces now. The one thing that they don't have is a quarterback. The one thing they didn't have last year with Jake Fromm is consistency at quarterback. I think they got the quarterback this year, guys. And again, I'm not saying he's Justin Fields. I'm not saying he's Trevor Lawrence. I'm not even saying he's Mac Jones. He's not as dynamic as those guys. The one thing he is, though, he's steady, and he's probably a little bit more skilled than a lot of people want to give him credit for. He looked awesome against Auburn. Every time they needed a big throw, he made it on the numbers right to their wide receiver. But when I think about Georgia, what I think about is the fact that all the other pieces are there. And you guys know, right? Like, I've been critical of Georgia through the years. I have been on Kirby Smart's you-know-what ever since the year that they tried to pull the stunt to get into the playoff, where they were arguing that because they played Bama close in the SEC championship game, that they deserved a shot at the playoff. And I've been on Kirby Smart ever since then. But I will give him credit for this. The man can certainly recruit, and the man knows, like, fundamental solid football. Like, Georgia will never be Mississippi State with Mike Leach or Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley. But they play really good defense, and they run the ball really well, And you saw that Saturday night. They completely stuffed the ball down the throat of Auburn all night long, completely dominating that game. I mean, they just kicked the you-know-what out of them. They finished with over 200 yards rushing, almost 5 yards per. I mean, they dominated them. They got the O-line. They got the running game. The defense is phenomenal. Auburn didn't score a single touchdown all game long. And when I look at it, I'm sitting here saying, I think Georgia has their quarterback, and I think he could be the missing piece for that team. Not saying he's as talented as some other guys in the country. They don't need that much talent at that position. They just need consistency. They need a guy that's not going to turn the ball over, and they need a guy that can make passes when he's called upon, and I saw that against Auburn. Now, we'll see because they go to Bama in 2 weeks, and, of course, they have Florida coming up. I think Georgia's pretty good. By the way, they also have Tennessee next week, so going to be fascinating. But I think they got their quarterback. I think Georgia's probably, if I was power ranking teams right now, I would say behind Clemson and Alabama, I would probably have Georgia at number 3. I think they're really good, and I don't know how their playoff picture is going to shape up because they play Bama once in the regular season. They might have to play them twice. But I bring it up just to say that I do think that they are better than people realize, and I give this kid a ton of credit for working.